The galaxy had long seen Earth as nothing more than a forgotten, weak planet. Its sun, a star that had been quiet for millions of years, was dismissed as harmless. The vast, powerful galactic empire had no reason to worry about the tiny blue planet tucked away in the corner of the universe. Its people, once considered dangerous, had vanished centuries ago, and their home had fallen into silence. But everything was about to change. In the heart of the galactic empire, the leaders of the most powerful species gathered in a grand meeting hall. The room was filled with alien diplomats, generals, and ambassadors from across the galaxy. They spoke in calm, measured tones about matters of war, diplomacy, and power. The topic of Earth came up again, as it often did. Some of the leaders, having been alive long enough to remember Earth's long-lost people, joked about how the sun would never pose a threat. They laughed at the thought that anything on that planet could ever be a concern. But then, something strange happened. A young officer working at the Empire's communications station, deep in a forgotten corner of the galaxy, was the first to notice the shift. She had been assigned to monitor distant systems, routine work she'd done countless times before. But as she ran the regular scans on the outer regions, one reading caught her eye: an anomaly in the solar system of Earth. She double-checked the data, thinking there had to be a mistake. It was impossible. But the readings were clear. The sun was shifting. It was emitting unusual energy bursts. This couldn't be right. The sun had been dormant for so long, there was no way it should be active. Her heart raced as she contacted her superior. But by the time she had, the anomaly had grown. The sun's energy was spiking, sending out powerful waves of radiation that had never been seen before. At first, the senior officers dismissed her warning, telling her it was a simple mistake, a miscalculation. "You're reading it wrong," they said. "Earth's sun is harmless, always has been." But the officer was persistent. She reviewed the data over and over. The readings didn't lie. Something was happening, something that had never been predicted. Her gut told her this wasn't just a fluke. It was the beginning of something. Back in the Empire's council room, the leaders continued their discussions. They weren't concerned about the tiny planet so far from the heart of the galaxy. But then, another message arrived. A report from another station, much closer to Earth, confirmed what the officer had seen. The anomaly was real. The sun was indeed stirring. The leaders exchanged puzzled glances. This was impossible. How could the sun of a dead planet suddenly come to life after so long? They tried to ignore it at first, chalking it up to some weird cosmic event. After all, they had more important matters to discuss. The Galactic Empire had been in control for centuries. Earth, with its long history of weakness, was no longer a threat. But the reports kept coming. Energy levels around the sun continued to rise, stronger and stronger. Even the most advanced alien technology in the Empire couldn't explain it. The Galactic Empire, with all its might, couldn't comprehend how a star could suddenly become so active. There were whispers now, rumors that something was happening on Earth itself, something no one had ever expected. Some of the older leaders, who remembered Earth's people and their mysterious disappearance, began to worry. What if this was no natural event? What if there was something, or someone, on Earth, hidden away for all these years, waiting for this very moment to return? Far from the Empire's reach, on the dark side of Earth's moon, hidden deep in a forgotten base, something stirred. Ancient machines that had long been dormant began to hum with life. The first signs of motion were subtle. An energy pulse here, a small shift in the equipment there. But the signs were undeniable. The machines were waking up, powered by the same sun that was sending shockwaves through the galaxy. In the vast corridors of the underground human base, a figure stood, watching the first lights flicker on. It had been a long time, minus 500,000 years. But now the time had come. The sun had awakened, and with it, humanity's long-dormant power. The figure smiled, a knowing look crossing his face. Humanity had been waiting. They had hidden their strength, their ships, their weapons, all of it, hidden away, waiting for this moment. And now, as the Galactic Empire underestimated the power of Earth's sun, they would learn a terrifying truth. Earth had never been as weak as they thought. It had only been waiting. The Empire's leaders continued to discuss the situation, still unconvinced that the anomaly posed any real danger. They agreed to send a probe to Earth to investigate. It was a simple mission, nothing to worry about. But as the probe moved closer to the planet, the sun's energy reached a critical level. A massive burst of energy surged from the sun, sending the probe crashing into space debris, disabling it instantly. The signal was lost. The Galactic Empire's leaders stared at the screen in disbelief. This was no ordinary event. The officer who had first raised the alarm watched the chaos unfold, her heart pounding in her chest. She had been right. The sun wasn't just waking up, it was a warning. And she knew that what was coming next would shake the galaxy to its core. Far away from the heart of Earth's sun, the long-forgotten fleet of humanity stirred, ready to rise once again. The galaxy would soon learn what happened when you underestimated humans, and the consequences would be devastating. The Empire's first response. The Galactic Empire's leaders stared at the screen in stunned silence. The probe that was supposed to investigate Earth's strange sun anomaly had been obliterated, gone in an instant, lost in the vastness of space without any warning. The room filled with a nervous energy, the quiet hum of machinery in the background the only sound. What happened? The question hung in the air, unanswered for a long moment. One of the higher-ranking generals, his face grim, stood up to analyze the data. His alien species, with their advanced technology, had mastered space travel and conquered countless civilizations. But this was something else entirely. The sun wasn't supposed to be capable of such energy, let alone blast a probe out of existence. There had to be something else, something hidden in the data. Are you saying we're dealing with a cosmic event of unknown origins, or are we missing something? Another council member demanded. The general shook his head slowly. The energy signatures. They don't match any known phenomenon. It's like the sun is, evolving. But that's impossible. Suns don't change like this, not after millennia of dormancy. A murmur of agreement ran through the room, but the unease was palpable. For centuries, the Empire had expanded its rule across the stars, and yet, here was a problem they couldn't solve with brute force. A problem from a long-forgotten planet in the distant reaches of the galaxy. A problem that seemed to defy logic itself. Perhaps the probe was faulty, suggested another advisor, trying to restore some calm to the room. But the general didn't believe it. The probe was the latest model. It was built to withstand much worse than this. Something happened out there. Send another, one of the other council members ordered, trying to regain control of the situation. This time, let's direct the probe directly at the source of the anomaly. Get the full data we need. The decision was made quickly. Despite the growing fear, the leaders knew they had to investigate further. If there was any chance this was a fluke, they needed proof. If it was a threat, they needed to understand it before it grew any stronger. However, the deeper they delved into the mystery, the more alarming the findings became. The energy bursts from Earth's sun were not random. They were rhythmic, pulsing, as though responding to some hidden trigger. And the energy levels were steadily rising. It was as though the sun itself was sending out a warning. Meanwhile, far from the Empire's reach, on Earth's moon, the hidden base began to hum with life. The machines that had been dormant for eons were now stirring into action. They had no choice. The awakening of the sun was the signal they had been waiting for, a signal that had been encoded into the system long before the fall of humanity. As the first fleet of human warships powered up, their systems came to life, one by one. Long-forgotten ships, hidden in deep craters, slowly began to emerge from their slumber. The dark side of the moon, once thought to be barren, was now the birthplace of humanity's most powerful weapons. Every ship, every weapon, every strategy was designed for one purpose: to take back what had been stolen. The energy from the sun fed the ship's power grids, reigniting the old technologies with terrifying efficiency. Their systems hummed to life, sending signals into deep space. The humans were not extinct. They had been waiting. And now, they were ready to make their presence known. Back in the Galactic Empire's council chamber, they continued to argue over their next move. The new probe sent to Earth was returning data faster than they could process it. The energy bursts were unlike anything they had ever encountered before. And this time, the probe hadn't been destroyed. Instead, it transmitted a single chilling message before its signal was cut off. This is Earth. We are awake. Prepare for the reckoning. The Empire's leaders froze as the message echoed across the room. A chill ran down the spine of every council member. For a moment, the room was silent, each leader contemplating the same horrifying thought. Was Earth truly back? Were humans really still alive after all these centuries? And more importantly, had they been lying in wait, silently preparing for this very moment? "What do we do?" the general asked, his voice barely a whisper. "We prepare for war," the High Council leader replied. "Whatever this is, it's no accident. We must send forces immediately to neutralize the threat. We cannot risk Earth's resurgence." But even as the orders were given to prepare the Empire's fleet for a swift response, a new worry arose. If Earth had truly been waiting for this moment, what kind of force could it bring? What had humanity learned in the time they had been gone? And what had they been hiding, deep within their ancient lost technologies? In the deepest corners of the Empire, a new fear began to rise. The power that humanity had once wielded was not gone. It had simply been dormant, waiting for the day when the Empire would forget, when they would become too complacent. And now, that day had come. The Empire's leaders would soon find out just how dangerous it was to underestimate Earth, and they would soon regret it. The gathering storm. The Galactic Empire was known for its iron grip on the galaxy, its fleets dominating entire star systems, and its advanced technology that crushed any opposition. But now, for the first time in centuries, fear began to creep into the hearts of its leaders. The sun of a long-forgotten planet, once deemed a harmless, unimportant star, had suddenly turned into a source of unimaginable power. And with it, the long-lost human race seemed to be returning. "How is this possible?" General Rika, a seasoned officer of the Empire, muttered as he reviewed the incoming data. His tentacles curled tightly around the armrests of his chair, the muscles in his alien form flexing with barely contained tension. Humans were thought to be extinct, erased. We left nothing behind, nothing that could return to challenge us. The rest of the council sat in stunned silence, their eyes glued to the holographic display that showed Earth's sun growing increasingly active, its energy output surging with every passing moment. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. The anomalies in the sun's behavior were too precise to be natural. It was as though the star was responding to an unseen hand, awakening to some ancient call. "Send another fleet, full strength this time," the High Council leader, Vorkai, ordered in a voice that was both calm and menacing. "We'll send our best ships, and we will destroy whatever has been hiding on Earth, once and for all." But even as the orders were given, there was a creeping unease among the council members. A quiet murmur spread, as doubt began to settle in. This wasn't the Earth they remembered. This wasn't the world they had obliterated so long ago. On Earth, the situation was far different. Humanity had been preparing for this moment since the day the Earth's destruction had been foretold. While the Empire had thought humans were long gone, humanity had made sure to leave behind a legacy, a seed that would one day rise again, hidden beneath the surface of the moon, far away from the prying eyes of the Empire. Humanity's fleet was now fully awakened. The ships that once lay dormant beneath the craters of the moon now soared into the cold expanse of space, powered by the same energy that the Empire feared. They were not just warships. They were symbols of humanity's resilience and ingenuity. The ancient machines, forgotten by time, hummed back to life as their systems, once dormant, now surged with purpose. "The time has come," Commander Lyanna's voice echoed through the fleet's communications system. Her eyes, hardened by years of waiting and planning, watched as the fleet of human warships moved toward the void, their engines glowing brightly against the darkness. "We have waited long enough. Now we fight." Each ship was armed with weapons designed to strike fear into the hearts of even the most powerful galactic empires. Their technology, though ancient, had been fine-tuned by centuries of dormant preparation. These ships were not simply relics. They were weapons of vengeance, ready to reclaim the Earth's lost glory. Commander Lyanna's hands rested lightly on the controls, her heart pounding with the weight of what was to come. She knew this wasn't just a fight for the survival of Earth. It was a fight to prove to the Empire that humans would never be forgotten, that humanity's spirit would never be extinguished. Back in the Empire's command center, the situation was worsening. The reports from their fleets, sent to monitor the rising energy of Earth's sun, were trickling in. What had once seemed like an isolated cosmic event was now unfolding into something far more dangerous. The sun was no longer just an anomaly. It was a sign of something greater, a signal from Earth itself. As the Empire prepared for an all-out strike on Earth, they were unaware of what awaited them. The human warships, each one brimming with ancient but potent technology, prepared for battle. Their weapon systems, powered by the very sun that had once been thought to be harmless, would prove more than a match for the Empire's might. "Get ready." Commander Lyanna spoke once more to her fleet, her voice calm but unwavering. "This is the moment we've all been waiting for. For 500,000 years, we've been in the shadows. Now we take back what's ours." She stared out into the vastness of space, watching as the fleet assembled. It was an army of forgotten warriors, but it was not their technology or their ships that made them strong. It was their purpose. The determination that coursed through their veins, the unbreakable will to restore Earth to its rightful place in the galaxy, was a force that no empire could ever truly understand. The first wave of human ships launched toward the heart of the Galactic Empire's vast territory. The Empire, brimming with overconfidence, had dismissed Earth and its people as nothing more than a faded memory. But now, they would learn the hard way. Humanity was back. The Galactic Empire had believed itself invincible, its grip over the galaxy absolute. But now, as they prepared for their final strike against Earth, a growing sense of dread began to take hold. In the deep corridors of the Empire's command center, a single thought echoed in the minds of its leaders. Had they underestimated humanity? Had they awakened a force far stronger than anything they had ever encountered? As the first of the Empire's fleets moved to engage the rising human ships, it became clear that this would not be a simple victory. The battle for Earth had begun, and the outcome was far from certain. The clash of titans. The void of space grew tense as the human fleet approached the heart of the Galactic Empire's domain. The shimmering lights of distant stars flickered in the distance, and the cold silence of space was pierced only by the hum of ancient engines that powered the human warships. These ships, long hidden beneath the surface of the moon, had been dormant for centuries. But now, they were awakening to fulfill a single purpose: to reclaim Earth and to make the Galactic Empire pay for its crimes. Commander Lyanna stood at the bridge of the flagship Vengeance, her gaze fixed on the massive display in front of her. It showed the approaching Empire fleet, a massive armada that dwarfed her own. But she didn't flinch. The Empire was powerful, yes, but they had underestimated humanity's will to survive. They had forgotten the relentless spirit that had built Earth's once glorious civilization. "Status report," Lyanna commanded, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Her crew quickly fed her the data, their faces illuminated by the cold light of the ship's control panels. "The Empire's fleet is massive, Commander. They have at least 3 times our numbers, and their firepower exceeds ours by a significant margin," Lieutenant Heron reported, his face grim. "But we have the advantage of surprise. They don't know we've awakened yet. We can strike first." Lyanna nodded, her jaw tightening. "We will strike fast. We will strike hard. Earth will be ours again." With a swift motion, she gave the order, and the fleet began its advance. Meanwhile, in the command center of the Galactic Empire, General Rika paced back and forth, his mind racing. The reports flooding in from their scouts were troubling. The energy signature from Earth's sun had continued to grow, and the fleet that had been sent to investigate the anomaly was now missing. Worse, the Empire's most advanced ships had reported strange interference as they neared the planet's vicinity. "Impossible," Rika muttered under his breath, his eyes scanning the data. How could they have known? How could they have come back? The fear that had begun to creep into the Empire's leaders now fully took root. They had thought Earth's destruction was final, a mark of their superiority. But now, it seemed as though Earth had returned with a vengeance, stronger than they had ever imagined. "General, we've detected a fleet of unknown ships entering our territory," one of the officers reported, voice shaky. "They're moving at high speed and are in direct alignment with Earth's coordinates." "Prepare the fleet for battle," Rika ordered. "All units, engage at once. We will crush them before they reach Earth." Back in the human fleet, the first wave of ships moved forward, their engines glowing like fiery beacons in the vast darkness of space. The ships were smaller than the Empire's war vessels, but they were nimble, their technology ancient yet advanced in ways the Empire had never encountered. The humans had designed their ships not just for firepower, but for precision, speed, and stealth. Commander Lyanna stood on the bridge, her hands gripping the console as the countdown to battle began. "All ships, prepare to engage," she announced, her voice calm but filled with resolve. "This is our moment. Remember why we fight. For Earth. For the future. For revenge." The fleet erupted into action, breaking the silence of space with the roar of their weapons firing. The Empire fleet had no time to react as the first volley of human plasma cannons slammed into the lead ships of the Imperial forces, sending shockwaves through the Empire's lines. The Empire's response was swift. Massive turrets on their warships opened fire, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts toward the incoming human fleet. The human ships were quick, dodging and weaving through the onslaught of fire. Every hit that connected seemed to make the Empire's ships tremble, while the human ships shook off the damage as if it were nothing more than a light breeze. "Hold steady," Lyanna ordered. "We're stronger than they think. Our ships can take more damage than they're used to." One by one, the Empire's vessels began to fall. The first ship to go down was a massive dreadnought, its hull torn open by a devastating strike from the Vengeance. The ship's massive frame crumpled under the force of the explosion, its fiery wreckage drifting off into space. The Imperial fleet, caught off guard by the intensity of the human assault, struggled to regroup. Their ships were too large, too slow to avoid the deadly precision of the human warships. The Empire's pride was being shattered in real time. "Commander, the Empire's fleet is disoriented," Lieutenant Heron reported, his voice filled with excitement. "They didn't expect this. We're making progress." Lyanna's eyes sparkled with determination, but she knew this was only the beginning. The Empire had underestimated them, but that was about to cost them dearly. The battle had only just begun, and the human fleet was far from finished. "We press on," Lyanna ordered. "We break through their lines and head straight for their command center. We'll show them what happens when they underestimate humanity." Across the battlefield, as the battle raged on, the fear within the Empire's ranks grew. The fleet, once so confident in its superiority, now found itself on the defensive. The human ships, though fewer in number, fought with an intensity and precision that the Empire had never seen before. It was clear to everyone involved that this was not just a battle for control over a planet. This was a fight for survival. This was humanity's moment to reclaim what was once taken from them, and the Empire was starting to realize they had made a terrible mistake. As the first wave of human ships clashed with the Empire's front lines, it became undeniable. Humans were not the weak, defeated species the Empire had thought them to be. They had come back stronger, and they would not be easily crushed. The true power of Earth's forgotten warriors had finally been unleashed, and the Galactic Empire had only just begun to feel the weight of their mistake. The Empire's desperation. The battle had shifted into full chaos. The once confident Imperial fleet was now caught in a whirlwind of explosions and collapsing ships, all triggered by the unrelenting advance of humanity's revenge. Every time the Empire thought they had gained an upper hand, a human warship would slip through their defenses, delivering a devastating blow to one of their most advanced ships. The commander of the Empire's forces, General Rika, could hardly keep up with the rapidly deteriorating situation. His fleet, larger and more technologically advanced, was now fighting for its survival. The humans, though outnumbered, fought with a fury and precision he had never expected. "Report," Rika barked, his face flushed with frustration as he stared at the holographic display of the battlefield. "The human ships are maneuvering faster than we anticipated, General. They're using hit-and-run tactics, staying just out of range of our weapons," one of his officers replied nervously. "We've already lost 3 dreadnoughts and several destroyers. Their technology is unlike anything we've ever faced." Rika clenched his fists in anger. "We underestimated them," he muttered. "But we still have numbers. We still have firepower. We will crush them." On the bridge of the Vengeance, Commander Lyanna stood at the helm, her eyes scanning the chaos unfolding on the battlefield. The human fleet was holding strong, but the Empire wasn't backing down. Despite the initial shock and fear, the Empire was beginning to reorganize, slowly adapting to the tactics that had thrown them off guard. "Continue pushing forward," Lyanna commanded. Her voice remained steady, but there was a fierce determination in her eyes. "We can't let them regroup. We have to keep the pressure on them. They can't recover from this." Her words were like a rallying cry for her crew, whose spirits were high as they continued to strike at the heart of the Empire's forces. The human warships had been designed for speed, agility, and flexibility, traits the Empire's massive warships simply couldn't match. The battle raged on, with the humans gaining the upper hand, one strike at a time. But even as the humans pressed forward, Lyanna knew this was only one phase of the battle. The Empire would fight back, and they would fight hard. This was far from over. Far behind the front lines, in the heart of the Empire's flagship, Emperor Zelos paced in a private chamber. He was watching the live feed of the battle, his face an unreadable mask of fury. He had underestimated the humans, and now his empire was on the verge of collapse. His hands gripped the armrest of his throne as he glared at the screen. "This cannot be happening," Zelos growled. "We've destroyed their planet. How could they have returned so strong? What do they have that we don't?" His advisors stood by, silent, knowing better than to speak unless spoken to. Zelos turned sharply toward them. "Prepare the final weapon," he ordered, his voice cold and full of malice. "We'll show them the true power of the Empire. We'll wipe them from existence once and for all." Back on the battlefield, the human fleet continued its onslaught. But Lyanna knew something was off. There was a shift in the Empire's movements. The once chaotic, disorganized response from the Empire's forces was now becoming methodical. The Empire was regrouping, and from the looks of it, they were preparing something devastating. "Something's coming," Lyanna murmured to herself. "They've got a plan, and we need to be ready." She turned to her lieutenant. "Lieutenant Heron, get me the fleet's status. I need to know everything. We can't afford to be blindsided." Within moments, Heron fed the information into her console. The data confirmed her suspicion. The Empire had begun to pull their remaining ships back, consolidating their forces around a central location. "They're preparing something," Heron said, his voice tense. "It's unlike anything we've seen so far. It's a massive energy surge." Lyanna's heart raced. She had been expecting the Empire to use every trick they had, but this was different. This was the kind of desperation that only came when a force was cornered, when they were willing to sacrifice everything to stop their enemy. "Get the fleet into position," Lyanna ordered. "We need to hit them before they can deploy whatever this is. They're not just fighting for survival. They're fighting to destroy us." Meanwhile, in the heart of the Empire's command center, Emperor Zelos watched as his final weapon began to charge. It was the last card in their deck, an energy weapon so powerful that it could obliterate an entire fleet with a single shot. The weapon had been built to defend against any threat, but Zelos never expected it to be used against humans. He thought they were gone for good. "Activate the weapon," Zelos ordered coldly. "End this. Wipe them out." The weapon's core began to hum, the energy building to an unbearable crescendo. A blinding light filled the room as the weapon came to life. On the Vengeance, Lyanna's eyes widened as she saw the massive energy surge on her sensors. She had been right. The Empire was preparing a weapon that could level everything in its path. "We need to move. Now," she shouted. "Get the fleet into defensive formation. We need to create a shield around our ships." But it was too late. The energy beam fired, a blinding streak of light that tore through space toward the heart of the human fleet. The fate of the battle, and of humanity itself, now hung in the balance. The Empire's last stand. The energy beam shot through the void of space with unimaginable force. It was as if the stars themselves were being ripped apart by its power. The beam aimed directly at the heart of the human fleet, and its destructive power could be felt even before it made contact. The commanders aboard the human ships saw the incoming threat, and their hearts sank. This was the Empire's final weapon, a weapon of pure annihilation. Lyanna's pulse quickened as the beam got closer, and the cold realization washed over her that this was no ordinary attack. She had expected something powerful, but not something so overwhelming. Every instinct in her body screamed to take evasive action. But there was no time. There was no space to escape. Braced for impact, she ordered, her voice sharp and steady despite the rising panic around her. The fleet's shields were already in place, but Lyanna knew that the power of the Empire's weapon far exceeded anything they had ever encountered. The human fleet had faced many battles, but nothing like this. They were about to face an existential threat. The beam struck. The explosion was deafening, a burst of energy so intense that it seemed to freeze time itself. Ships trembled, their outer hulls cracking under the strain of the massive force. The Vengeance shook violently, throwing Lyanna off her feet. Her console sparked, flickering uncontrollably as the shockwave rattled through the ship's core systems. For a moment, everything was still. The silence was deafening. Lyanna's breath came in shallow gasps. She forced herself to her feet and turned back to her command station, her heart pounding. The screen flickered back to life, and what she saw nearly made her lose her composure. The Empire's weapon had hit the fleet hard, but it hadn't destroyed them. The shields held, though they were severely damaged, and the ships in the fleet had taken heavy hits. But they were still intact. There was a chance. She quickly tapped into the fleet's communication channel. "Report now," she demanded. "We're still standing, Commander," came the breathless reply from one of the bridge officers. "The shields held, but the damage to our vessels is significant. We've lost 2 destroyers, and the rest of the fleet is heavily damaged. But we're still here." Lyanna exhaled in relief. The human fleet had taken a beating, but they were alive, and they were far from finished. "We have to retaliate now," she said firmly. "Prepare the counterattack. All ships, engage with full force. We will not let them get away with this." Elsewhere in the battlefield, General Rika was seething with rage as he saw the human fleet survive the full brunt of the Empire's final weapon. The sight of the destruction had given him hope, but now, it seemed as though the humans had once again defied the odds. His grip tightened around the edge of his command chair. "How is this possible?" Rika muttered, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "How can they still be standing?" An officer hurried over, his face pale. "General, we've just received a report from the flagship. The humans are retaliating. Their fleet is reorganizing and preparing a counterattack. It seems they've absorbed the blow and are still ready to fight. Rika slammed his fist on the console. This is madness. They should have been obliterated. This is the final strike. Why won't they just fall? His frustration was clear, but his officers could only offer him silence. The humans had proven themselves far more resilient than anyone could have imagined. The more Rika tried to understand, the more it seemed impossible to defeat them. Lyanna's face hardened with resolve as she watched the human ships regrouping. Despite the damage they had taken, their spirits were unbroken. There was no turning back now. This battle would determine the fate of humanity. She saw the Empire's ships regathering themselves as well, clearly preparing for the next phase of the conflict. Lyanna knew that they had one shot at this. If they didn't act now, the Empire might finally crush them under the weight of its might. Lock onto their lead ships, Lyanna commanded. We will take down their flagship first. Without their command, the Empire will crumble. Fire all weapons on my mark. The crew around her moved quickly, relaying orders and activating the necessary systems. The hum of the ship's engines grew louder as the fleet prepared for their final push. This time, they would not be caught off guard. This time, the humans would take the fight directly to the heart of the Empire. Meanwhile, aboard the Empire's flagship, Emperor Zelos stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching as his final weapon prepared to fire again. His eyes were cold, and the corners of his mouth turned into a slight smirk. The humans had survived the first strike. But this time, Zelos would make sure they were finished. His weapon had just enough energy left to wipe them out completely. The human resistance was strong, but Zelos was certain this would be the end. As the weapon powered up again, Zelos gave the order to fire. Back in the midst of the human fleet, Lyanna's eyes locked onto the incoming blast. The Empire's weapon had recharged, and this time, there was no room for mistakes. The Vengeance was still in range, but it was battered and struggling to stay operational. Prepare for impact, Lyanna whispered to herself. We've come too far to fail now. As the beam of energy sped toward them once more, everything seemed to slow down. Lyanna knew that this was the Empire's last desperate attempt. They were throwing everything they had left. But the humans weren't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. And with that, the final battle between humanity and the Empire began the final hour. The entire battlefield was a blur of chaos. Ships twisted and turned, firing at each other in bursts of light and color. The once clear void of space was now filled with the sounds of battle, as the clash between the human fleet and the Galactic Empire reached its boiling point. Both sides were battered, bruised, and exhausted. Yet neither would back down. For the humans, this was no longer just about survival. It was about revenge for the generations lost to the Empire's cruelty. Lyanna stood at the center of the command bridge, eyes fixed on the enemy fleet. The Vengeance was still intact, though barely, its shields flickering in and out of function. Every ship under her command was hanging by a thread. The Empire's weapon was devastating, but the humans had shown that they were more than capable of surviving, adapting, and retaliating. Her hands tightened around the command console as the last wave of enemy ships descended on their position. The Empire had not given up yet, but neither had humanity. Commander, they're launching their final attack. One of her officers reported urgently. The Empire's flagship is preparing to fire again. It's going to be powerful. We can't take another direct hit. Lyanna took a deep breath. She knew what needed to be done. The Vengeance was the key to this battle. Without it, the human fleet would crumble. They needed to disable the Empire's flagship and destroy the weapon once and for all. But that would take all the strength and firepower they had left. Set course for the flagship, she ordered. Full speed ahead. We're ending this here and now. The crew responded swiftly, activating the ship's engines and weapons. The Vengeance lurched forward, its remaining engines roaring as it cut through space toward the Empire's flagship. It was a suicide mission, but Lyanna knew there was no other choice. It was time to bring the war to an end. Across the battlefield, General Rika watched as the humans made their move. The Vengeance was charging straight for them, a symbol of humanity's determination. He clenched his jaw in frustration. The humans had proven to be more resourceful and more dangerous than anything he had anticipated. This battle had taken far longer than he'd expected, and now it seemed as if the tables were turning. The Empire's flagship was still operational, but its defenses were weakening. The humans were pressing their advantage. "They're coming straight for us," an officer called out. "We've lost too many ships to defend the flagship. We can't hold them off much longer." Rika turned away from the view of the advancing human ship and gave the order, "Prepare the final weapon. If we are going down, we'll take them with us." Lyanna's heart raced as she watched the Empire's flagship draw closer. The weapon was already powering up again, and they had mere seconds before it fired. But they had made it this far. There was no turning back now. "Target the flagship's core," Lyanna ordered, her voice unwavering. "We hit them where it hurts." The Vengeance shuddered under the strain of its broken systems as it fired its last remaining salvo. The beams of energy shot out toward the flagship, tearing through the void with precise accuracy. It was their best shot. The moment the beams hit their mark, a massive explosion rippled through the heart of the Empire's flagship. The shockwave reverberated through the surrounding ships, sending many of them tumbling into chaos. The flagship's massive form staggered in space, its once pristine hull now a tangle of fires and debris. But it wasn't over yet. The Empire had one last card to play. The Empire's final weapon, a massive energy cannon built into the flagship's core, was ready to fire. It glowed brighter than 1,000 suns as it powered up, ready to obliterate everything in its path. Rika watched as the cannon prepared to unleash its fury. The Vengeance was mere moments from impact, but the weapon had one last chance to turn the tide of battle. Rika's mind raced. Was this truly the end? Was humanity about to achieve the impossible? A countdown echoed through the flagship's control room as the weapon began its final charge. But Lyanna had one last trick up her sleeve. As the human fleet surrounded the now damaged flagship, she barked her orders to the crew. "Initiate the final maneuver. All ships target their weapon system. Now." The Vengeance surged forward, its remaining engines pushing it faster than it had ever moved. The remaining human ships followed in formation, coordinating their attack with perfect precision. They were no longer just a fleet. They were a unified force, determined to end the Empire's reign once and for all. Just as the Empire's weapon fired, a simultaneous barrage from the human fleet struck the energy cannon. The weapon backfired in an explosion of unimaginable force, sending shockwaves throughout the flagship and surrounding ships. The massive energy burst swallowed everything in its path. The flagship was torn apart, disintegrating in a fiery inferno. And with it, the last hope of the Galactic Empire was gone. For a moment, there was silence. The stars twinkled peacefully in the background as the remnants of the once mighty empire drifted lifelessly through space. The human fleet, battered but unbroken, had emerged victorious. Lyanna stood in the bridge of the Vengeance, watching the aftermath of the battle. They had done it. They had avenged their fallen comrades and secured humanity's place in the galaxy. The Empire had underestimated them, and now they were no longer a threat. Humanity had returned, and they were here to stay. The unexpected arrival. The vastness of space was quiet and still. Stars twinkled like distant memories, their light taking millions of years to reach the eyes of those who looked up. Earth, a small blue planet, sat in the corner of a quiet corner of the galaxy, unaware of the storm brewing just beyond its atmosphere. The Galactic Empire, a vast and powerful force, had spent centuries spreading across the galaxy. It conquered planets and crushed any who dared resist. Its fleets, each one a city-sized war machine, had torn through countless star systems. No race, no species had stood a chance against them. Until now. The Empire's ships were approaching Earth, and their commanders were confident. This would be an easy mission. Humanity had long been forgotten by the Empire. They were nothing more than a few scattered colonies, weak and isolated. Earth itself was just a distant, unimportant planet. It had been centuries since the Empire had even thought about it. But the Empire had no idea what awaited them. The first sign that something was different came when their massive warships appeared on Earth's radar. Thousands of kilometers away, the sensors on Earth's most advanced defense satellites picked up the signature of the Empire's fleet. It was large, far larger than anything humanity had ever faced. The Empire's ships, known for their size and power, were enough to make even the bravest soldiers feel small. These were the ships that had taken down entire civilizations. But Earth's leaders didn't panic. They didn't call for evacuation or hide underground like they might have done in the past. No, they simply watched as the Empire's fleet grew closer. There was a quiet confidence in the air, a sense of calm that spread through humanity like a ripple across water. General Kira Langston, commander of Earth's defense forces, sat at the command center, her eyes locked on the screen. The data was flooding in. The Empire's fleet was heading straight for them. And it wouldn't be long before they would arrive. A quick analysis of the incoming fleet told her something unexpected. "They're not even bothering with any advanced cloaking," she said, her voice steady. "They don't think we're a threat at all." Her words were met with silence. Her team of officers, all seasoned soldiers, shared uneasy glances. The Galactic Empire had made no secret of their power, and they were about to face it head-on. Yet there was something in Kira's voice that made them feel different. She didn't seem scared. She seemed ready. "What's the status on our fleet?" Kira asked. "Humanity's warships are on standby," replied Lieutenant Ramirez, his face a picture of determination. "But we don't have the firepower to match them. At least, not on the surface." Kara turned to face the view outside the window of the command center. The Earth below was calm, oblivious to the incoming threat. It was almost as if the planet itself was waiting, as if it had always known this day would come. "Then it's time we show them something they weren't expecting," Kira said, a small, confident smile forming on her lips. The room went quiet. Everyone understood what she meant. Humanity had something the Empire didn't expect. Their will to fight, their creativity, their ability to surprise. As the fleet drew closer, Kira ordered the fleet to prepare. Their ships were smaller, yes, but they were fast and nimble. The Empire's huge dreadnoughts, with their massive weapons and overwhelming firepower, were intimidating, but not invincible. Earth's ships may not have been as powerful, but they were ready to outsmart and outmaneuver their enemies. The Empire's flagship, the Elysium, was the first to break through Earth's atmosphere. It was a massive, terrifying vessel, covered in dark steel plating that reflected the light of the distant stars. It moved slowly, as if it was confident no one would dare stop it. Behind it, thousands of smaller warships followed, like a swarm of locusts ready to consume everything in their path. But something was off. As the first Empire ship entered Earth's orbit, its sensors detected an unexpected shift in the atmosphere. The humans weren't running. They weren't hiding. In fact, they weren't even moving. They were waiting. And then, out of the silence, came the signal. A signal unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered. It wasn't a distress signal. It wasn't a threat. It was laughter. The sound echoed through the Empire's communication channels, loud and clear. At first, the commanders thought it was a malfunction or an error, but the laughter grew louder, almost mocking. It came from the human ships, seemingly from nowhere. "How could this be?" one of the Empire's commanders asked. His voice trembled in disbelief. "Why aren't they afraid?" In the heart of the Empire's fleet, on the Elysium, Admiral Vero listened to the human laughter fill his ship's communication system. It was the last thing he expected. His fleet had crushed entire star systems, and now they were being laughed at by a planet they had considered insignificant. "Prepare to fire," Admiral Vero ordered, his hand gripping the armrest of his command chair. His voice was steady, but the seed of doubt had been planted in his mind. But no one had any idea that the real shock was about to come. Earth wasn't afraid. And in that moment, they didn't just accept the threat. They mocked it. They had something more than just ships. They had something that no one could predict: confidence, intelligence, and a dangerous willingness to fight back. And as the first shots of the Empire's fleet came closer to Earth's defenses, a human ship, small and seemingly fragile, appeared on the radar. It was heading directly towards the Elysium, and it wasn't stopping. The battle for Earth had begun, but no one knew that this was not going to be a battle like any other. The human response. The Empire's fleet loomed large in Earth's sky, its ominous ships casting shadows over the planet's surface. The Elysium, flagship of the Galactic Empire, towered above all, its massive guns pointing towards Earth. Yet, in all their confidence, the Empire's commanders still couldn't shake the strange feeling that something wasn't right. As the Empire's ships moved into position, their weapons prepared for the impending assault, they were met with something they had never expected. The humans, instead of crumbling under the weight of the Empire's power, were ready. They had never been a match for such an overwhelming force. But they weren't backing down. Inside Earth's command center, General Kira Langston stood with her arms crossed, her eyes fixed on the incoming fleet. She wasn't afraid. She knew the human fleet was smaller. But it wasn't about size or strength. It was about the human spirit, the one thing that no empire had ever managed to measure or understand. "Is everything ready?" she asked. "Yes, General," Lieutenant Ramirez responded, his fingers flying over the control panels. "We've activated the main defenses, and our ships are ready for combat." But his voice trailed off, uncertainty creeping into his words. "But what?" Kira asked. "There's no way we can beat them head-on," Ramirez said, his voice steady, but his mind racing. "We've got the speed, but their firepower, it's unmatched." Kara nodded slowly, then turned to face the others in the room. Her team of officers and military leaders looked at her, waiting for direction. They were all aware of the daunting odds, but they trusted Kira to lead them. "We don't need to win through firepower," Kira said, her voice calm but firm. "We'll win through strategy, through ingenuity. This isn't just about who has the bigger guns. It's about who's smarter, and we have that advantage." The tension in the room lifted slightly as the officers exchanged looks of cautious hope. They trusted Kira. If anyone could outthink the Empire, it was her. Meanwhile, on the Elysium, Admiral Vero was growing impatient. He had watched Earth's defenses, and they hadn't fired a single shot. The humans were just sitting there, as if waiting for something. It was unsettling, even for someone as experienced as Vero. The laughter from earlier had unsettled him, and now the silence was even worse. "Ready the weapons," he ordered. "Prepare to obliterate their defenses." A low hum filled the air as the Elysium's weapons powered up, the enormous cannons ready to fire. Vero's face hardened as he stood tall, gazing out the view screen. He had seen this happen before, countless times, but this time it felt different. Back on Earth, Kira watched as the incoming fire from the Elysium drew closer. A small smile played on her lips. "Do they really think this is going to be easy?" she muttered under her breath. Her fleet wasn't as large, but their ships were fast and agile, designed for hit-and-run tactics. They were equipped with powerful shields, designed to withstand the Empire's firepower long enough to counterattack. Earth's military had always been known for its resourcefulness, and that would be the key to their survival. Suddenly, the first of the Empire's shots reached Earth's outer defenses. Bright flashes of energy lit up the sky, and shockwaves rippled through the atmosphere. But the Earth defense shields held firm, absorbing the energy of the blast with minimal damage. "They're testing us," Ramirez said, his voice tense. "They want to see how we react." "We've got them right where we want them," Kira replied confidently. "Now, let's show them what humans are made of." With a command from Kira, the human fleet moved into action. The first wave of human warships darted forward, taking advantage of their speed and maneuverability. They weren't as heavily armed, but their agility was unmatched. As the Empire fired their massive beams of energy, the human ships weaved and dodged, avoiding most of the shots. The Empire's weapons were powerful, but they were designed for large, stationary targets. The humans were far from stationary. "Target the lead ship," Kira ordered. "We need to make them realize that this isn't going to be an easy victory." The human warships moved in quickly, using their superior maneuverability to close the gap with the Empire's fleet. They launched a barrage of missiles, small but deadly, targeting the Empire's vulnerable points. The Elysian shields absorbed most of the missiles, but a few managed to slip through, causing explosions along the sides of the massive ship. Admiral Vero watched in disbelief as his flagship shook under the impact of the human missiles. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The humans were supposed to be weak, defenseless, and outmatched. Yet, here they were, hitting back with everything they had. "Return fire," Vero roared. "All ships, open fire." The Empire's fleet unleashed a wave of energy beams at the humans, but it was too late. The humans had already begun their counterattack. Their ships moved like lightning, striking again and again, each hit more precise than the last. From the command center on Earth, Kira watched the battle unfold on the screens before her. Her hands rested on the control panel, her fingers tapping rhythmically as she observed the chaos in space. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but they were holding their own. "Keep pushing," she said to her officers. "We're just getting started." The Empire had underestimated humanity, and as the battle raged on, the humans were proving just how wrong the Empire had been. This wasn't going to be an easy fight, but it was a fight the humans were ready for, and they weren't about to back down. The battle escalates. As the conflict raged between the Galactic Empire's massive fleet and Earth's agile warships, the vastness of space seemed to shrink. Energy beams collided with shields, missiles tore through the emptiness of the void, and explosions rocked the Empire's warships, but the battle was far from over. The Empire's fleet, despite being formidable, had underestimated the humans they were now engaged with. And now, they were beginning to realize their mistake. Admiral Vero stood at the center of the command bridge on the Elysium, his face a mask of frustration. The humans had turned the tide in ways he hadn't anticipated. Every shot he ordered fired, every strategy he employed, seemed to be countered with uncanny precision by the humans. "Admiral, we're losing the outer line," reported Commander Ral, his voice tight with worry. "Their ships are too fast. We can't lock on." Vero's eyes flickered with irritation. He had never faced an enemy so unpredictable. "Activate the gravity wells," he ordered sharply. "Force them into our firing range. We'll trap them." The Elysium's gravity generators hummed to life, creating small but powerful gravitational fields that began to distort the space around the human ships. These wells would slow them down, pulling them toward the larger ships. But the humans weren't stupid. They could see it coming. On the other side of space, Kira Langston was analyzing the Empire's moves. From the moment the gravity wells activated, she knew the Empire was trying to trap them. But she also knew they had prepared for this. "Lieutenant, get us out of here," Kira ordered, her voice sharp with command. "Now." Without hesitation, Lieutenant Ramirez punched in the coordinates, and the ship's engines roared to life. In an instant, the human fleet shifted course, dancing just outside the range of the gravity wells. The Empire had expected them to be trapped, but the humans were always a step ahead. "They're slipping through our grasp, Admiral," Commander Ral reported again, his tone growing more panicked. Vero clenched his fists. "We're not losing to these primitives. Focus fire on the flagship," he shouted. But as the Empire directed all of its firepower at the lead human ship, the Heirs, something strange happened. Just as the first round of laser fire hit, the Ares vanished into thin air, reappearing several kilometers away. It was a human tactic they had used before, something the Empire had never encountered. Spatial displacement. Impossible. Vero growled, slamming his fist onto the console. The humans were using technology the Empire had no knowledge of. And worse, it was working. Kira's face appeared on the holographic screen of her ship's command center. Her smile was calm but unwavering, a quiet confidence emanating from her as she looked at her officers. They want to play this game. Fine, she said, her voice steady. Let's show them how it's done. With another command, the human ships split into several smaller fleets, each moving in unpredictable patterns, utilizing the same spatial displacement technology. The Empire's fire rained down, but the humans were always just out of reach. Meanwhile, on the Elysium, Admiral Vero was grinding his teeth in frustration. His ships were designed for overwhelming firepower, for sheer strength, but now they were facing a foe who fought with intelligence, agility, and unpredictability. He needed something more. Send in the vanguard, Vero finally ordered, his voice low with anger. Prepare for close combat. We'll show them the true strength of the Empire. The Vanguard was one of the Empire's most powerful warships, built for brutal, close-range engagements. It was heavily armored, equipped with enormous plasma cannons and advanced technology designed to breach enemy lines. Vero was determined to turn the tide with the Vanguard, and he expected it to be the end of the humans' little show. But Kira wasn't about to let that happen. As the Vanguard moved into position, Earth's fleet took a bold and risky move. They pulled back just out of the Vanguard's firing range, then began launching a swarm of decoy drones. The drones mimicked the human ships, their speed and shape nearly identical. The Vanguard locked onto the decoys, firing massive plasma blasts. The drones exploded one by one, but Kira's fleet had already taken advantage of the distraction. With quick coordination, the human ships closed in on the Vanguard, using their speed to weave through its fire. Then, just as the Vanguard opened fire again, the human ships launched their counterattack. Missiles whizzed through space, slamming into the Vanguard's weaker points. The ship rocked under the barrage. Direct hit to the core, Commander Ral screamed. We're losing power. The Vanguard's mighty shields flickered and collapsed under the pressure. Even the Empire's most advanced ship wasn't immune to the humans' ingenuity. Admiral Vero watched in shock as the Vanguard's hull began to crack under the pressure. Retreat, he commanded, his voice barely a whisper. But it was too late. The human ships, relentless in their pursuit, had already begun their next attack. Vero had underestimated them. And now, the Empire's pride was being humbled by what they had once considered a helpless race. On Earth, Kira watched as the Vanguard limped away, its once imposing form now damaged and retreating. She didn't take her eyes off the screen as her fleet continued to press their advantage. This battle wasn't over yet, but the humans had proven one undeniable truth. They were not to be underestimated. Don't stop now, Kira said to her crew. This is just the beginning. The Empire had just realized that humanity wasn't a force to be trifled with. The battle had only just begun, but Earth's message was clear. They were not going to lose. The tides turned. The conflict in deep space raged on. The Galactic Empire's fleet, once so confident in its power, now found itself in a precarious position. Every strategy they used, every tactic they deployed, seemed to be falling apart. The humans, once dismissed as a primitive species, were proving to be anything but weak. They had not only survived, but now they were turning the tide of the battle in their favor. Admiral Vero's mind raced as he stood in the control room of the Elysium, staring at the holographic display of the battlefield. His flagship was the pride of the Empire, but it was slowly being worn down by the relentless human tactics. Even his most trusted commanders were struggling to contain the human ships. Admiral, Commander Ral spoke up, his voice tense. The humans are adapting faster than we can respond. They've already anticipated our next move. Vero slammed his fist onto the console. The humans were too clever, too resourceful. They seemed to know their every move before it was even made. His fleet was starting to falter, and the once certain victory over Earth was slipping further away. "Prepare the Abyssal for deployment," Vero ordered, his voice cold. The Abyssal was a secret weapon, a massive warship of incredible firepower. He had hoped to keep it in reserve, but now the time had come. If the humans could not be beaten by traditional means, perhaps the Abyssal could make the difference. Far away, Kira Langston and her fleet were aware of the Empire's desperation. The humans had gained ground, but they couldn't afford to grow complacent. Every move they made, every trick they used, had to be perfect. The Empire had one last card to play, and it was a dangerous one. Kira sat at the center of her command bridge, her face illuminated by the flickering lights of the battle. She studied the movements of the Empire's ships, looking for a flaw, an opening. Her crew was on edge, knowing that any mistake could turn the tide back in favor of the Empire. The Abyssal was on the horizon, and it was only a matter of time before it joined the fight. "Status report," Kira said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Shields holding at 83%. Lieutenant Ramirez replied. "We've sustained some damage, but nothing critical yet. However, their reinforcements are coming in fast." Kira's eyes narrowed as she watched the vast fleet of the Empire begin to form up around the massive silhouette of the Abyssal. The ship was unlike anything she had ever seen before, its dark hull almost blending into the shadows of space. If the Abyssal was deployed, it would be a game changer. She couldn't allow it to enter the fray. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Kira commanded. "Set course to intercept the Abyssal. We need to hit it before it can unleash its full power." The human fleet moved into position, weaving through the battlefield with precision. Kira's mind worked quickly, calculating the distance, the trajectory, and the timing. She knew that if the Abyssal fired its weapons at full strength, it could obliterate a large portion of her fleet. They had to take it down before it could launch a single shot. Meanwhile, on the Elysium, Admiral Vero was watching the human fleet approach. His hands trembled slightly, a mix of anticipation and frustration. The Abyssal had been designed to crush any resistance, to dominate any battlefield. He believed that this ship, this weapon, would finally give the Empire the edge it needed. But as he watched the humans move with a newfound confidence, a nagging doubt crept into his mind. Could they really defeat the Abyssal? Full speed ahead, Vero barked, giving the order to launch the Abyssal into the fray. "Let's finish this." The Abyssal moved like a shadow through the vast emptiness of space, its weapons charging with a deadly hum. But before it could reach firing range, Kira's fleet closed in, surrounding the ship like a swarm of hornets. The Empire had underestimated the speed and coordination of the humans. The human ships darted around the Abyssal, firing concentrated bursts of energy at its vulnerable points, avoiding its deadly plasma blasts with skillful maneuvers. "Target its engines," Kira shouted. "We need to disable its mobility." Her fleet followed her command, their missiles tearing into the Abyssal's engines. The massive warship shuddered as it absorbed the hits, but the humans were relentless. They kept up the pressure, hitting its weak spots with pinpoint accuracy. Back on the Elysium, Vero's face twisted with anger and disbelief. "No, get the Abyssal back. We can't lose it now." The Abyssal's engines were failing, sparks flying from its damaged systems. The human ships were closing in, and the Empire's once mighty weapon was on the brink of destruction. Vero knew that if they didn't act quickly, they would lose their advantage forever. But Kira wasn't done yet. With a final, decisive maneuver, the human ships launched a coordinated strike directly at the Abyssal's core. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, the shockwave rattling the nearby Empire warships. The Abyssal, the Empire's final hope for victory, was gone. The humans had done it. Against all odds, they had crippled the Empire's greatest weapon. "Victory," Kira whispered, her voice barely audible over the roar of the celebrations on her ship. The battle wasn't over, But the humans had struck a blow that would echo across the galaxy. The Empire was no longer the unstoppable force it once seemed to be, and for the first time, the galaxy had seen what humanity was truly capable of. As the smoke cleared, Admiral Vero stared at the destruction of his fleet, knowing that the battle had been lost. But this was only the beginning. He would not let this defeat define the Empire. The war was far from over. The Empire's last stand. The vastness of space seemed eerily silent after the destruction of the Abyssal. The Empire's once mighty fleet, now shaken and disarrayed, hovered at a distance, unsure of their next move. The humans had proven themselves once more, resilient, smart, and above all determined. But Admiral Vero was not one to accept defeat. He was a leader of the Galactic Empire, a military genius who had risen through the ranks with sheer will and strength. His pride was at stake, and the humiliation of losing to these primitive humans was something he could not stomach. Reorganize the fleet, Vero ordered through gritted teeth. We'll fight to the last ship if we have to. Deploy the remaining dreadnoughts. Show them what the Empire is capable of. Commander Ral, his trusted second-in-command, approached Vero with a wary expression. Admiral, the fleet is in disarray. The humans have crippled our command structure. They've taken out our most powerful ships. If we continue this fight, we'll risk total annihilation. Vero's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the damage. The Empire's ships, which had once been seen as unstoppable, were now limping through space, vulnerable to every human maneuver. The defeat of the Abyssal had shaken the very core of the Empire. Still, Vero was a man of pride, and he was not about to let a group of humans determine the fate of the galaxy. I didn't come this far to back down now, Vero said with cold determination. We will launch the final assault. The humans think they've won, but they haven't seen the full power of the Galactic Empire. Prepare to engage them with everything we've got. Back aboard the Vanguard, Kira Langston could feel the tension in the air. Her crew had just witnessed an incredible victory, but there was no time to celebrate. The battle was far from over. The Empire, though shaken, was still a force to be reckoned with, and Kira knew that the true test of humanity's resolve had just begun. Captain, the Empire's fleet is regrouping, Lieutenant Ramirez reported. They're preparing for another strike. They're desperate, but we can't afford to let our guard down. Kara stood tall, her gaze unwavering as she looked at the holographic battlefield. She had faced many challenges before, but this was different. The stakes had never been higher. If they didn't finish what they had started, the Empire would return with a vengeance. Focus on their weak points, Kira said, her voice calm but resolute. We've taken out their command ships, but they still have formidable firepower. We need to hit them hard and fast. No mercy. As her orders were relayed, Kira couldn't shake the feeling that the Empire had something up its sleeve. The Abyssal's destruction had been a massive blow, but she had no doubt that Vero had something even more devastating planned. She needed to be ready for whatever came next. The battle raged on as both fleets clashed in the cold vacuum of space. Human ships darted and weaved, using their superior agility to avoid the Empire's attacks. But the Empire wasn't giving up easily. Vero had deployed his final reserve forces, massive dreadnoughts bristling with weaponry that would make even the most advanced human ships tremble. They were his last chance for victory. Kira's ship moved swiftly, staying out of range of the enemy's devastating firepower. She watched closely as the Empire's dreadnoughts began to line up their shots. Their energy cannons glowed brightly, charging for a massive barrage. It was the kind of firepower that could destroy entire fleets in one shot. Brace for impact, Kira shouted, as her crew scrambled to reinforce the shields. The first volley of fire came fast and fierce, lighting up the darkness of space with a blinding flash. Kira's ship shook as the energy pulses slammed into the shields, but they held. The human technology had been designed to withstand such onslaughts, and for now, it was working. Return fire, Kira ordered, her hand steady on the controls. Human ships swarmed the Empire's dreadnoughts, firing concentrated bursts of energy that cut through the enemy's defenses. The Empire's ships retaliated with force, but they were slow and cumbersome, their weapons firing in predictable patterns. The humans had learned to counter these moves, outmaneuvering the Empire's best efforts with speed and precision. Despite their tactical advantage, the humans couldn't afford to let their guard down. The Empire was pushing harder now, desperate for a win. And as each new wave of fire came, it became clear that the Empire's last stand wasn't just about military superiority. It was about their pride, their very existence. If they lost this fight, the Galactic Empire would crumble, and their legacy would be forever tainted. Kara could see it in the eyes of her crew. They knew this was the turning point. If they could win here, they would have a chance to secure the future of humanity. But if they failed, the galaxy would remain under the Empire's oppressive grip. The tide of the battle seemed to shift back and forth. The humans launched wave after wave of fire, targeting the weak spots of the Empire's ships, while the Empire pushed back with every ounce of its power. It was clear now that the final moments of the battle would come down to one thing: who could maintain their resolve when everything was on the line. Kira's voice was steady, but her heart raced. This is it. We finish this now. Her fleet surged forward, and the final assault on the Galactic Empire began. It was a fight for survival, a fight for freedom, and a fight that would shape the fate of the galaxy forever. The final assault. The battle in space had become a blur of lights, explosions, and endless conflict. For hours, the humans and the Galactic Empire had clashed in a deadly game of cat and mouse. But now, the stakes had reached a boiling point. Admiral Vero's final assault was underway, and humanity's survival depended on the next few moments. Kira Langston's heart raced as she watched the massive dreadnoughts of the Empire line up for another barrage. The sheer power of their weapons was enough to wipe out entire fleets in an instant. The humans had gained the upper hand, but the Empire was desperate and had nothing left to lose. This was their last chance to crush the rebellion and assert their dominance once and for all. "Captain, the dreadnoughts are charging their weapons," Lieutenant Ramirez shouted. "They're preparing to fire a full barrage." Kira's mind raced. The Vanguard and the other human ships had been dancing around the Empire's attacks, using speed and agility to their advantage. But this was different. The Empire's final assault would be unlike anything they had faced before. There was no room for mistakes. "Prepare the countermeasures," Kira ordered, her voice calm but sharp. "We need to disable their weapons before they fire." As the countdown began, Kira felt the pressure mounting. This was the moment that could change everything. The Empire's energy cannons were charging, the massive ships bracing for their most devastating attack. Kira knew that if they couldn't disable them in time, the human fleet would be obliterated. The hum of the ship's engines was deafening, and the tension was almost unbearable. In the distance, the Empire's dreadnoughts loomed large, their enormous guns glowing with energy. The human fleet was scattered across the battlefield, hoping to stay out of range long enough to strike back. "Launch the EMP charges," Kara commanded. "Take out their energy cores." With a flick of her wrists, the orders were sent. A series of EMP charges shot out from the Vanguard, speeding toward the enemy ships. Each charge was a gamble, a last-ditch effort to disable the Empire's weapons before they could unleash their fury. The charges struck their targets with perfect precision, sending shockwaves through the Empire's dreadnoughts. The massive ships shuddered, their energy shields flickering as the EMPs disrupted their systems. The enormous cannons that had been charging for their final attack sputtered and shut down, one by one. Kira's breath caught in her throat as she saw the first dreadnought lose power. The enormous ship's weapon systems shut down completely, its once terrifying firepower now useless. A ripple of hope surged through the human fleet. The Empire's final strike had been stopped. "Direct hit on their power grid," Lieutenant Ramirez called out, his voice filled with relief. "They're losing power. We've disabled their main cannons. But the victory was short-lived. As the humans cheered, the rest of the Empire's fleet began to respond with desperation. The remaining dreadnoughts unleashed their own waves of fire, not aiming for precision, but simply to overwhelm the human ships. "Brace for impact," Kara shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. "We're not out of this yet." The Vanguard and the other human ships surged forward, dodging the enemy's chaotic fire. The Empire's last-ditch effort to destroy humanity was a frantic barrage of shots, their aim wild but still deadly. Explosions rocked the battlefield, and the air crackled with the energy of battle. But the humans were ready. Their ships darted and twisted, narrowly avoiding the deadly fire. Kara had instructed her fleet to stay mobile, to use their speed and agility to avoid the Empire's blasts. It wasn't a perfect strategy, but it was the only one that had worked so far. "Return fire," Kara ordered. "Hit them while they're disorganized." The human fleet responded with a series of well-aimed strikes, taking out the remaining enemy ships one by one. The dreadnoughts that still functioned were being picked apart, their shields flickering under the intense pressure. The Empire's ships, no longer organized or coordinated, were falling apart. Their once imposing presence in space was crumbling. But just as Kara thought victory was within reach, a new threat emerged. A massive flagship, hidden behind the chaos, emerged from the shadows. It was larger than anything the humans had seen before, more advanced, more terrifying. The Empire's last hope. "This isn't over," Lieutenant Ramirez said, his voice filled with disbelief. "That ship, it's bigger than anything we've ever faced." Kira's eyes narrowed. This was it, the final challenge. The Empire was desperate, but they still had one trick left. If they couldn't take down that flagship, the fight would continue. "All ships, target that flagship," Kara commanded. "It's now or never. We finish this fight today." The human fleet moved in unison, directing all their firepower at the massive ship. The enemy flagship's shields held for a moment, but the combined might of the human ships began to overwhelm them. Every shot, every strike, chipped away at the flagship's defenses. It was a battle of attrition, and the humans were winning. For a brief moment, it seemed like the tide of battle might turn again. The flagship launched countermeasures, sending out a flurry of missiles and energy pulses. But the humans were quicker. Their ships scattered and regrouped, avoiding the barrage and returning fire with deadly accuracy. The flagship's shields flickered, its engines sputtering as the humans closed in. The end was near, and the Empire's hope was fading. But they were not going to surrender without a fight. As the flagship took its final blows, Kira could feel the weight of the battle in her bones. The Empire had pushed humanity to the brink, but now they were facing their end. The last remnants of the Galactic Empire were on the verge of collapse. And for the humans, victory was within reach. The Empire's fall. The final moments of the battle hung in the balance. Kira Langston could hear her heartbeat in the stillness between the chaos of explosions and gunfire. The Empire's flagship, now battered and broken, was still a force to be reckoned with. Despite its failing systems and crumbling shields, it refused to go down without one last fight. "Keep the pressure on," Kira shouted, her voice firm as ever. "We can't let them regroup." The human fleet had surrounded the flagship, their firepower relentless. The Vanguard was at the center of it all, its weapons charged, its engines roaring with purpose. Kara could see the devastation unfolding around her as their concentrated attacks tore through the Empire's defenses. The flagship's massive hull was marked with scorch marks, and its once glowing engines had begun to flicker. Still, it pushed forward, attempting to flee or retaliate in any way it could. But there was no escape. The human ships were faster, more maneuverable, and they'd already learned the Empire's weaknesses. The battle was over. The question was only when the flagship would fall. The flagship's captain, a towering figure with cold eyes and a deep voice, had been the last hope for the Empire. Through a comlink, He spoke with grim determination. You think you've won. This isn't the end. The Empire will rise again. But Kira only smiled. The words were hollow. This was the final stand. The Empire had already been broken, its forces scattered, its fleet torn apart by the human ingenuity and tenacity they had underestimated from the start. Fire on the core. Kira barked, her face resolute. Take out their power source. The Vanguard's cannons fired in unison with the rest of the fleet, aimed directly at the central energy core of the flagship. The explosion was enormous. Bright streaks of energy shot out into space, a massive burst of light signaling the flagship's demise. Kira watched as the flagship's massive hull cracked open, its engines gone, its weapons useless. It was no longer a threat. The once mighty warship was now nothing more than a drifting wreck, completely disabled. But just as Kira thought the battle was over, an unexpected signal interrupted her thoughts. The shattered remains of the flagship had been broadcasting a distress signal, a final call to the Empire's distant command. Admiral, we've detected a transmission. Lieutenant Ramirez called from the communication station. It's a distress signal. It's from their high command. Kira's brows furrowed. What's the message? Ramirez's fingers flew over the control panel. It's encoded, but I'm deciphering it. Give me a moment. Seconds felt like hours as Kira waited. The victory was almost theirs, but something about this last message seemed important. The transmission flickered, then cleared. The message was chilling. We have received reports of the human fleet's destruction. The voice came over the comm, cold and emotionless. Prepare for reinforcements. Kira's stomach dropped. The Empire was not finished. Reinforcements were on the way. Impossible, she muttered under her breath. We've destroyed their fleet. How could they? But Ramirez's voice cut through the tension. Admiral, there's more. The signal isn't just from this fleet. It's from a fleet beyond the Empire's borders, much further out. Kira's mind raced. Could it be? Had the Galactic Empire truly been this organized, that it could send reinforcements from the far reaches of the galaxy? Were they going to face an even larger force? Prepare the fleet, Kira said, her voice hardening. We might have won today, but this war is far from over. We need to regroup. Reinforcements might be far, but we can't be complacent. The humans had won a significant victory, yes, but the war was far from over. Kira knew it. The Empire had shown its resilience before, and they would fight back, perhaps even harder than before. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity would face whatever came next with strength. As the human ships began to regroup and prepare for what was to come, Kira felt a new weight settle upon her shoulders. This was no longer just a battle for survival. It was a battle for the future. They had defeated the Empire, but the cost of victory had yet to be truly understood. I will not let them destroy our future, Kira whispered to herself. She stared out into the vastness of space, feeling the pressure of what was to come. Humanity will stand strong. The human fleet, battered but unbroken, had dealt a blow to the Galactic Empire that would echo throughout the galaxy. Yet Kira knew the final chapter of this war had not yet been written. There was still more to come. As the stars glowed around them, the humans prepared for the next stage of the fight. The galaxy was watching, and the Empire would soon know that humanity would not be an easy adversary.